to get the form, talk to one of the police officer's buddies, fill out the form, and they tell you if you lie, you're going to jail. And when you go in to make the complaint, the first thing they do is pull up your rap sheet. And before they even hear your complaint, oh, so I see you shoplifted over here, and you were driving without a license over there. They're demeaning your credibility off the bat. So what we did, we worked with them to make the form more friendly, to emphasize the fact that you can get the form at multiple locations, including online. The fact that you don't have to go to the police office to fill it out. You can fill it out anywhere with help from the NAACP, Not in Our Town, Black Lives Matter. We'll help you fill it out, and we'll go with you to the police station to hand it in. All right? So now, hopefully, that institutional piece, that form that really didn't consider the rights of those who've been in trouble with the law in the past, sometimes through no fault of their own, we now have a form that's more friendly, more accessible, and hopefully more people will use it. Sorry, I went off on some tangents there. I hope I keep your point.
After the interactions Justice has with the police officer, he seems greatly affected and disturbed by his experience. He continues to journal about this discomfort he has with that night. It became a night that influenced his thinking and decision-making as a person of color. In our work with activism, can you discuss events that led you to become an activist?
I've always been concerned with issues of race in this country. I am convinced that the Constitution is one of the greatest documents that has been written by political thinkers in history. It enshrines liberty for American citizens, freedom, justice, all these things. They're written down. You can't take them away. So you have the ideal over here as embodied in the Constitution, and then you have reality. And it's always bothered me that we don't live up to our own ideals, right? So, for me, the precipitating moment, the moment that pushed me to becoming an active activist, was November 8th of last year, when the current president was elected. I was shocked that someone who had stated positions that seemed the complete opposite of the ideals of the country actually managed to win the election. And I was afraid that this new national tone would begin to filter down to local jurisdictions like Hayworth and Bloomington and Norman and so on. So I became determined at that point that I was going to work in my local community to make sure that we stood up for the ideals on which this country was founded. So there was one precipitating event. It was the election of November of last year.
Okay, a little later in the text, an event occurs that causes the community members to become activists in their towns. Manny, Justice's best friend, and his parents talk about how they might lose their jobs. How can you tell us about some of your specific experiences as an activist?
And how that pertains to how I'm viewed in the community, or just generally what I do?
Your success, like your struggles.
One of the things we are most proud of is in our just coming up on a year of existence as BLM Blono, we managed to get what do they call it? A citizens review board, or citizens review board in place, although they call it a Citizens Police Relations Board, PSCRB, and I forget exactly what, Public Safety and Community Relations Board, I think they call it. For 30 years in Bloomington Normal, there have been attempts to get some kind of review board over the police. So what are we talking about here? I talked about complaint form. So you get roughed up by a cop. You're mad about it. You file a complaint. The complaint goes to the police department. The police department investigates its own officers, and they come back to you and say your complaint was unfounded. That's it. You got to go home. This is one of the only institutions that gets to investigate its own self. So we said, hang on, why don't we have another body that if somebody goes through that complaint process and is not happy, they have another outlet. There's something else they can do. So we need somebody to look over the police's policing of themselves. Chief Brendan Hefner in Bloomington Police Department was adamantly against any type of review board, which was confusing to me. He would say, we have a good process, we are transparent, and we do everything by the book, so we don't need this thing. And our response was, well, hang on, if it's so good, what's the big deal with having somebody else look at it? To which he had no good response. Just on principle, he's no review board. Now, they made some arguments about, well, you know, we have a police union, and the union says that the only person that can investigate another officer is the police. So in our contract, it says you can't do what you want to do. And our response was, hang on, we haven't even talked about what it's going to look like yet. You don't even want to hear the details of what we're going to do. You're just saying no based on this one provision. We can work around that. There are 200 plus communities in the United States that have citizens review boards, including in Champaign, or Urbana-Champaign. What do they call it? Champaign, Urbana? Anyway, over there. So they have them close by. They have them around the country. What's the big deal? So after 30 years of trying, we managed to do it in a year. And one of the ways I think the BLM is different from other activist groups is we don't mess around. We're not the most polite. We're not the most diplomatic, because people are dying on the street. Police officers are killing people, and here's the worst part: there's no justice. All right. If we had rogue cops that were doing bad things and the criminal justice system was punishing them, now we would be okay with it, but it's better than what we have now. Of the myriad of police brutality cases we have around the country, there are less than a handful of officer convictions. So we are of the opinion that all the nice talk is great, but what has it got us? So now it's time to stand up and put pressure on people. And lo and behold, 30 years of trying in Bloomington, no review board. 1 year of BLM, it's in place.
Our main character of Justice writes a journal to Dr. Martin Luther King as a way to talk about his feelings and also always choose a higher ground. Do you use any teachings or ideas to help you with your message? Also, what message would you send to kids our age?
We rely on a lot of external sources for inspiration, for guidance, for structure, for tactics. There are too many to name. But since he's writing to Dr. King, he's definitely one of our inspirations. What's fascinating to me is people, when they talk about Dr. King, they want to talk about the I Have a Dream speech. Dr. King, towards the end of his life, had moved beyond that. He was now, that was an eloquent statement of the ideal. You know, you should be judged by the content of your character, not by the color of your skin. Absolutely, yes. But it wasn't happening. So he began to create a movement that was more radical and that dealt with the economic underside of prejudice and racism. And that's when he got taken out, which was really interesting to me. All the time he's talking about the ideals and kumbaya and let's all live together and integrate. He was fine. As soon as he went to the economic piece, that's when he died, or when he was killed. We take inspiration from Malcolm X, who was unapologetically proud of who he was and demanded his rights. So in that way, I look to today and I see a myriad of activist groups that are like Dr. King, peace and talk rationally, and let's just make this happen, right? And then we got the BLMs who are more like Malcolm X, who are like, yeah, that's all good, but come on, the time for talk is done. What's going on, you know? So the message for you, get informed. There's no one of color around this table. You all have no idea what it's like for me when I leave here and I get in my car, and my car's nothing wrong with it, and I've got my license in my pocket, and I've got my insurance in my glove box. But I'm scared to death. If I see those blue lights behind me, I've done nothing wrong. I'm thinking, oh snap, this could be the day. You know, and I'm a BLM guy, and they know who I am, and my name's in the papers, and what's going to happen today? What excuse could they find to take my life? How could that be today in America, for goodness sake? Because of the color of my skin, really? Because of the things that I do in the community for social justice, really? So we need allies, is what we need. We need people in the white community to say, we believe in this country. We believe what this country stands for. We believe in social justice for all. And we're not going to take this anymore. And it's got to be beyond, okay, well, I've got a black friend and I'll have him over for dinner type of thing. That's nice. But what we need is, when there's a march, are you there? You know, what are you doing to educate your fellow white family members? When your Thanksgiving's coming up, everybody's got that racist uncle who's going to sit at the table and talk some mess. What are you going to do when they do that? Are you going to say, well, Uncle Joe, that's not right? You know, that's what we need. People who don't just silently acknowledge that there are problems. But thank God it's not with me. Let me just go on with my business. That's not what we need. We need young people to know that, hey, stuff's happening and it's not right. And here's the key. I'm going to step up and do something about it. I talked about November 8th being my precipitating event. In a way, I'm very glad it happened. Because had Hillary Clinton been elected, I would have been like, oh, thank goodness gracious that man didn't get in. And now we can move on. And I would have still been sitting at home and talking about, oh, that was terrible what happened to that black guy at the hands of the police. And maybe I'll write a letter to the editor. But I'm not out there on the front lines organizing and talking to people and making things happen. So even for me, as an African American in town, looking at injustice, it took a precipitating event for me to stand up. I mean, I teach political science. I teach the ideals of the country and what we should do to actually make them happen. And after November 8th, I sat down and said, you know what? I'm teaching this stuff and I'm not doing it. So yeah, I got it. And it's painful. I have a 6-year-old and a 15-year-old at home, a 20-year-old in college. Last week, I was out of the house 4 nights out of 5 during the week. This coming week, I'm out of the house 4 nights out of 5. It's painful. It's difficult, but it's worth doing. You know, so maybe I get up a little earlier and hang out with my daughter. Or maybe I stay up a little later and hang out with my older daughter. But I got to do this. We have to stand up and say it's enough. So what can you all do? What's my message to you? Stand up. If you truly believe that this country is the land of the free, the home of the brave, if you believe that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then damn it, when you see somebody who's working against those principles, tell them that's not right. That's not American. That's not the America that I know and love. And you'll be surprised. Young people standing up to old people, older people. What are you talking about? But be confident, be prepared, read, right? Be knowledgeable. Say, well, Uncle Joe, when you say the affirmative action thing kept the white kid out of school. No. When you think about the history of things, and then there are quotas, if you will, they didn't keep them out. They just let some in who otherwise would not have been able to get in.
There's a lot of media attention circulating around the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yes.
Can you tell us about Black Lives Matter, your message, the work you do, the role you have?
There's a segment of society that is underrepresented. They are poor, they are uneducated, they are struggling, they're suffering, they don't have a voice. Politicians listen to people who speak up. Politicians listen to people who vote. Many of our constituents, the folks we represent at BLM, don't have a voice. They don't participate in the electoral process because it doesn't work for them. Politicians don't listen to them because they don't give them money and they don't vote. Right? So it's sort of a self-perpetuating cycle. I don't think the system works for me, so I don't vote. Well, you don't vote, so I'm not going to pay attention to you. Right? So long as those two things keep happening. Many of our members, we have a rule that the police may not join Black Lives Matter. And the police are very upset about that. Why can't we come to your meetings? Because folks won't come to our meetings if the police are there. They just won't come. They don't trust the cops. So what we are trying to do is to improve policing so that the people will have more trust, right? So that's one piece. We're trying to get folks to engage in the system, because if they are voters, then politicians all of a sudden are like, oh, you all, Black Lives Matter, just registered 1,000 new people to vote. Well, in Normal, Chris Coos beat his challenger by 17 votes. The mayor of Normal in one election lost by 7. You get 1,000 new people who never voted before to register to vote? In Bloomington, I think the number of votes cast in the last mayoral election was about 10,000. So you've got 10% new voters in the system? That can swing an election. What do you want me? I told you the black kids are out there with nothing to do. How about we build a playground and we have it well lit? Boys and Girls Club is out there. They're trying to do things in the community. They have no funding. Right? Now we talk about Illinois being in a poor financial state. That's true. But all politics is local. I just told my students at ISU, Friday on Wednesday. When I was a student at ISU, there were multiple nightclubs in town where you can go have a drink and dance. They don't exist anymore in Normal. They have our restaurant, a few bars. Where can people go to let off some energy? They can go to Bloomington. There's a few clubs there, but they don't really have a dance floor. It's all about drinking and eating. That's it. And students primarily all about the drinking. Well, why don't we have a dance spot in Normal? Well, because the town council has passed an ordinance which says any establishment that sells alcohol must get 51% of its revenue from non-alcohol sales. In other words, you got a spot, you got to sell more food than you can booze, from the money perspective. Well, if you don't like that, change it, students. There's 20,000 ISU students. Do you know Watterson Towers? Do you know this building in Normal? It's a big dorm, right? More people live in Watterson than voted in the last mayoral election in Normal. So what that means is the students of Normal, if they wanted to, if they were engaged, if they voted, they could own the entire Normal town council and have the mayor. Why don't they? They're too busy being distracted with stuff. It's hard to be involved in politics. There's so much stuff going on. My point is, all politics is local, so get people involved in their local politics. I don't care, Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, I don't care. Whatever your worldview is, exercise it. So that's what we're trying to get our constituents to do. You've been forgotten. If you go to the west side of Bloomington, just look at the quality of housing, right? And then go to the east side of Bloomington and look at it. You've got $1 million plus homes on the east side. You've got $15,000, $20,000 homes on the west side. They're not well kept. Why not? Is it people want to live in filth? People don't desire good things? Of course not. But because of the structural racism piece I've been talking about, they didn't have access to an education, so they didn't get a good job. What am I going to tell a kid who lives on the south side of Chicago and can go and get a job selling crack and make $500 a day? All right? He's got no education. The high school he went to, the elementary school he went to was crap. He didn't have Head Start when he was not even a teenager. Went to elementary school that was no good. High school that was no good. Got out, if he was lucky, with a diploma. And the best job you can get is flipping burgers at McDonald's. And somebody comes and tells you, yo, you saw this crack from me here, $500 a day. Right? He's been doing this for 15 years. Why would you all sitting around the table, somebody offered you that opportunity, get the hell out of here. Why? Because you have options. You've got hope. You can go to school, and you can do the right thing, and you can go to college, and then hopefully you'll get a job, and you'll be set. And you see examples with your parents. These kids don't have hope. All right, I'm going to sling it because, you know what? If I die when I'm 23, maybe that's an escape. What have I got to look forward to? I look around my neighborhood. How many old folk do I see around here?